Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting Daily December 2017. This is, if I remember correctly, day 17 of Daily December for me. Let me just make sure here. Yep, day 17. I'm now, I think, 5 days behind. Um, and that's what I want to talk to you all about today. Um, I I made a video before I started Daily December about how angry I was about how much my mental disorders have stopped me from doing the things that I want to do. Um, I barely um, leave my room anymore. I'm miserable. I'm going through withdrawal. Um, it's just, I can't do anything that I want to do. My depression's getting so bad that the normal things I use to distract myself from my anxiety, I can't enjoy anymore. And then with the dissociation, um, a couple minutes can seem like hours upon hours of living in agony. So I came up with a plan. I came up with a plan where I was going to show these mental disorders that they don't control me, that I still get to make my own decisions. And it kind of worked. Um, I decided that on Tuesday I was going to go see The Last Jedi. Again, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. Um, Nothing in this video is going to talk about the movie itself, because that's not the point of it. I do have strong feelings about the movie. I maybe at the end of Daily December or sometime in January, after people have had plenty of time to see it, I might give my opinion on it. I might not. I realized recently I watched The Force Awakens the night before I went to go see The Last Jedi and found that I enjoyed The Force Awakens a lot more after having seen it quite a few times. Because the first time I saw The Force Awakens, um, I absolutely despised it. Um, so, yeah, I would like to be able to see it again before formulating an opinion, because seeing it a couple of times makes a little bit more sense. And technically, I didn't see the whole movie anyways. We'll get to that. So anyway, in order to do this, again, I have major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder with agoraphobia, and PTSD. Um, Crowds terrify me. Other people terrify me. They can set off panic attacks and things like that. When I am in groups with a lot of people close together, like can happen in a movie theater, um, there are certain places on my body that you wouldn't think uh, would cause any issues, um, because they're in no way related to the. See, how do I phrase this without it being creepy? Um, if somebody brushes against certain parts of my limbs, and I'm not going to specifically say where, um, I start having PTSD flashbacks to the original trauma that is one of the root causes of my PTSD. And because it's on one of my it's on my limbs, uh, it's not uncommon in a crowded area for someone to brush against it. So crowds present a very, very terrifying situation for me, because if I start having a PTSD flashback, I get to relive the traumatic moment. And if that happens in public, um, yeah, just not something I ever want to deal with. Um, it's terrifying and a horrible experience. So I had to do major planning in order to be able to do this. I chose a matinee performance because less people are going to be at it. Um, I chose the first available showing of the day, um, on a Tuesday, specifically because it was still a full week before Christmas. So most people that were going to get some time off from work were not going to get it this week. They would still be working this week. So I figured the theater would be generally empty, despite this being a really big movie. Be generally empty. I had to have somebody drive me there so that I could take my medication literally right before we left to go for it. So that by the time we got there, because it takes about 20-ish minutes to get to the theater, by the time we got there, um, the meds would have lessened my withdrawal symptoms enough that I could do things like walk, and not be in extreme pain and, blinding anxiety and things like that. I purchased the tickets online so that I didn't actually have to interact with the person taking the tickets or anything. They have a little kiosk there. I punch in a number, prints my tickets, and then I can go in, to limit the social anxiety as much as physically possible. And I told my brother, who drove me, that there's a very good chance we were not going to be able to stay for the whole movie. Because if I started having a seriously bad panic attack, or when I'm in public in general, like my tremor goes from just my hand to sometimes my entire arm. It goes into my upper body. It goes like everything shakes. My leg shakes. The more anxiety I'm feeling, the more I'm shaking. And the withdrawal makes me rock back and forth while shaking. So I look kind of crazy. So I made all these plans. I talked it over with my therapist. She said, yeah, it's a good idea. It's a nice way to see, where you're at. You've already kind of accepted the fact that you may not be ready for this, and you've kind of accepted that, if it is too much, you can just leave. Because something that can be really, really dangerous if you're doing this it was kind of an immersion therapy type thing, where I went and I faced one of my biggest fears, which is being in a place that I can't easily get out of, surrounded by strangers. That hits everything. Where I might have a PTSD flashback and have a panic attack. So this was a form of immersion therapy. And what can happen with immersion therapy is what my therapist calls flooding, which is where you take it too far. You push yourself too hard, and what that does, it actually makes what you're trying to fix mentally worse, and it actually reinforces the anxiety, and it reinforces whatever disorder you're attempting to help treat with the immersion therapy. It has the exact opposite effect. So it was important for me to be able to make the decision beforehand that if things got too intense for me, I could leave whenever I wanted. I specifically chose a seat that, even if the entire thing was full, there's like the theater I went to had like a 2-tier kind of seating system, where it had like a base, and then you had stairs and seats that went, down and, towards the screen, and then there were stairs that went up, and so you have stadium seating. And I was in the front, the first row of the stadium seating going up. So the only thing I had between me and getting out of there was a metal railing that I could fairly easily get over if I had to. So yeah, I made all these plans, and I made it to the show. I saw the show for the most part. On the way there, I had a panic attack. Once we got into the theater and sat down, we didn't get drinks, we didn't get food, anything like that. Anything that might cause me some reason to need to get up or something like that. I'm like, no, it's not happening. We're just going to go in, we're going to watch the movie, we're going to leave. That's it. So we got in, we sat down. I'm shaking like a madman. I found out that the chair itself reclined slightly, but whenever it moved, it would squeak. So I'm rocking back and forth in the chair, shaking like a madman. The chair's squeaking every time I move it, and I'm doing everything I can to try and stop my body from reacting to all this, because I'm terrified that somebody is going to tell me to stop or yell at me, or an usher's going to come in and tell me that they've received complaints and I have to leave, and that would mess me up permanently. That would break me at that point. So waiting for the film to start, we got there about 20 minutes early, and I'm sitting there, and as the theater's starting to fill up, much more full than I was expecting. For a Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock, I really wasn't expecting this many people to show up. And so I'm starting to freak out, and I'm having another panic attack while all these seats are being filled and things like that. And luckily no one sat directly next to me, or I would have had to leave. And then the movie itself started, and I was still incredibly conscious about everything that I was doing, and shaking, and whenever there was a moment of silence, the entire auditorium, in my mind, the entire auditorium could hear this as I'm sitting there rocking, trying to contain myself. I passed out twice during the movie due to just sheer exhaustion from just constant panic attacks and being in a constant panic state for 3 hours. So I technically still have not seen the entirety of the movie. I actually went home and looked up a detailed plot summary to figure out what it was that I missed. Because again, I was completely unconscious. No spoilers. There are apparently certain scenes that you can completely miss and still understand most of the movie, because by the end of the movie, I understood most of what had gone on. So, the movie, theoretically, they could have cut a couple of scenes out of there. Didn't really affect the movie that much. Because, again, I made it through the movie. And then on the way home, I moved as quickly as I could. I have what's called femoral acetabular impingement, which means there's something wrong with my hip. That the bone, it's a bone deformity, and it's not something that you catch, or it's a deformity. And what I have is called a pincer deformity. So what it is my hip, the hip bone, or the hip joint is a ball and socket joint. So you have the hip and then the top of your femur, and it rotates like that. And that's why your leg has such a wide range of motion, because it just kind of pivots in there. Where my hip has extra growth on it. So instead of just being like this, it grows even further down. And while there's cartilage and stuff like that here, because your bones are never actually supposed to rub against each other, they have cartilage and all this other stuff to to keep that from happening. Where the additional growth is, there's no cartilage or anything because it's not supposed to be there. And so walking in general is incredibly painful for me. Um, uh, so as soon as the movie was over, as quickly as I possibly could, I got out of the theater. I got to the car. I did not have keys to the car. The car was locked. And so I had to wait for my brother to come out of the theater because he didn't move quite as quickly as I did, and I think he used the restroom before we left. And so for what seemed like hours to me, when in all actuality, I guarantee it was less than 2 or 3 minutes, I'm at the door desperately trying to open the door to the car because the car is one of the places that I feel safer. I don't feel safe because, again, I'm still out in public, but I feel safer in the car than I do outside of it. And I'm bawling my eyes out because I can't deal with all of the anxiety and all the shaking, and I'm in an immense amount of pain at this point because I've been my entire body has been shaking, and my neck hurt so badly from the fact that my head kept shaking, and all, like, everything up in here was shaking and convulsing the entire time, and I was trying to stop it. And so I strained a bunch of muscles in the back of my neck, and I was in an enormous amount of pain from my hip and from all my muscles hurting from shaking and being, having adrenaline running through my veins for 3 hours until I passed out a couple of times and then immediately woke up to full-blown panic mode again and fight or flight. Like, it was just this vicious cycle of push my body as hard as physically possible, and then when it couldn't handle it anymore, my entire body would simply shut down and I would pass out. And so I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm trying to desperately get into a car that I know I can't get into until it's unlocked unless I break a window or something, and that was not going to happen. That would create other issues. So finally my brother comes out, unlocks the car, and I get in, and the entire way home I didn't say a word. I just sat there crying and trying to control my breathing because I was hyperventilating. I would hold my breath to prevent myself from, because hyperventilation, basically you over oxygenate your blood, and it can cause you to pass out, and I didn't want to pass out again. And so because I could not stop myself from hyperventilating, I could not control my breathing whatsoever, I would just hold my breath for 5 to 10 seconds at a time, and then I'd breathe again, and then I'd hold my breath again, and then I'd breathe again. And it's a weird and incredibly painful but effective way to keep from over oxygenating your blood. And I got home, and I spent the rest of the day in my room mostly unconscious. I think I woke up long enough to eat something. I couldn't leave my room for the rest of the day. And then that was Tuesday. Wednesday was basically the same thing, where I didn't leave my room until really late at night Wednesday. My family brought me dinner. I didn't eat anything else for the whole day because I couldn't leave my room. And today's been kind of the same. Family has brought me food, so I'm not starving, and brought me, something to drink. You guys can barely see it. I actually have one of those 5-gallon water bottles. I have, a water thing. So I have water in my room at all times. So if I have to, and I have my Lord of the Rings glass that I specifically use only for water, so that anytime I need to, I can just fill it up with water and get something to drink, so I don't dehydrate myself or anything like that. But yeah, it was uh, a horrendous experience. It was not fun. Um, Again, I have strong opinions about the parts of the movie I remember, and that's the other thing that's interesting is despite the fact that other than when I passed out, I did watch the whole movie. Um, I have issues with memory because of uh, medication that they put me on over a decade ago. Because of the withdrawal, because of the anxiety and the depression, all of these things will actually affect your memory and your ability to create short-term memory and recall short-term memory. Um, and So I actually don't remember large portions of the movie that I saw. I know the main basic plot points. I know a few things, and I've read again. I read an entire plot summary of it after I saw it because I couldn't be spoiled anymore, and I wanted to know what I missed. Um, so I know the basic plot of the movie, but for the life of me, I can't remember very large portions of it, and it's really, really upsetting. That something as simple as going to see a movie, which has been my great escape for my entire life. Like going to the theater has always been a huge deal to me, and watching movies and things like that have always been a huge escape for me. Like that has been where my my fantasy world was, and that was how I dealt with a lot of the really bad stuff that happened in my life. Um, was if I couldn't handle it anymore, I would go watch a movie, and that would be able to let me escape to another world, to another place, just long enough so that the initial feelings that I couldn't get past would dull a little bit, and then I could deal with those feelings in a more healthy way. I could logically work out, this is what I'm feeling, this is why I'm feeling that way, it's okay for me to feel this way, um, the feelings are real, all of these things that, took me years and years and years to learn healthy coping skills. Um, all of it goes back to the initial spot of I need something to get me out of my own head, and movies have always been that's always been my go-to thing to get me out of my own head, so that I could use the healthy coping mechanisms um, that I had learned. And so it was simultaneously a bit of a triumph because I made it all the way through the movie. I got all the way to the credits, and was able to get out and everything. And a huge letdown that it took so much work and planning and effort to do something as simple as go see a movie. Something that most other people completely take for granted. Just the idea of going out in public, watching a movie, and then coming home. A couple years ago, I had no issue doing that. And now, again, in order for me to do that, I have to plan days in advance, and then I lose a good day and a half to 2 days of my life to recover from it. And that's really upsetting. And I know that there's a possibility that it won't always be this way, but it's this way now. And I hate it. I really, really do. Movies are very, very important to me. Acting, again, I'm a classically trained actor. I was planning on making it my career. And I did for a little bit. I actually got paid to be an actor. I had one theater company that whenever they needed someone to fill a role, they'd call me up and I'd audition, and sometimes I'd get the role and sometimes I wouldn't. But I was one of their go-to people that they kind of counted on as like, well, if we're ever in a tough bind, we just call up Jody, and it doesn't matter if he's going to be a lead or he's going to be a person that shows up, 3 times in the play and has like 10 minutes of stage time. He is going to, put forth the effort and put on a phenomenal performance. And I was always very proud of that. I can't do that anymore. And I can barely keep the characters I create myself for my D&D games straight. Much less do any sort of real acting. And so these mental disorders are robbing me of a lot of the things that used to make up my core identity. And I'm having a hard time figuring out who I am anymore. Because again, for a long time I was an actor. That's what I was. Hi, my name is Jody. I'm an actor. Can't say that anymore. Then I got into sales and retail management, and I could go, hi, my name is Jody. I'm a manager. I'm a sales manager. Because I was really good at that. I can't say that anymore. I couldn't work a cash register for more than about 20, 30 minutes now, much less run an entire store. Yeah, a lot of the things that I used to define myself with, I can't do anymore because of these disabilities. And it's really, really upsetting. So yeah, I saw a movie, I made it through. That's a triumph. And you have to, especially with everything that's going on in my life, I really do have to focus on the idea of every single triumph is a big deal. So while yeah, that was a triumph, it's still a very bittersweet triumph because it again shows me the massive amount of limitations that I have that I've never had before, that I have no control over. It's not that I'm not trying hard enough. It's not that, I'm refusing to do what's necessary for me to get better. No, I'm seeing multiple specialists that are particularly trained in forms of therapy and other things that are actually designed to help people like me that have issues with childhood trauma and abuse and things like that. I'm going to the exact right people. I'm just simply in a position where I can't get better right now. I can simply get from one day to the next. And eventually, one day, I might be able to get better. But right now, I can't because there's too many things outside of my control that are affecting me, like this withdrawal and things like that. Like I could go to therapy every day of the week, and my therapist would not be able to help me move forward with anything as far as dealing with my anxiety or dealing with my PTSD or anything like that. All of these things can be, I don't want to say cured, but they can be helped significantly to the point where they don't really impact your life anymore or don't impact your life in a really significant way. All of these things can be dealt with through therapy. But due to the fact that I'm dissociating all the time, therapy simply, if you're currently dissociating, therapy won't actually do anything for you, because part of the reason, part of the way that therapy works is you have these pathways in your brain of thought processes, and when you have bad thought processes where you're constantly catastrophizing things, or you're constantly beating yourself up as I hit my pop filter. Um, things like that. Um, those are hardwired into your brain, and your brain is going to use them because it's used to using them. And one of the things that therapy does is it trains you to form new pathways in your brain, new ways of approaching situations, and to stop your brain from using the pathways that it's very used to using, that it likes to use, and force it to use other ones. You are literally rewiring your brain. That is what therapy does. And that's why therapists have to be licensed and have to have a lot of schooling, and they have to do, depending on the state that you're in, they have to do anywhere between 2 to 4,000 hours of supervised therapy, or basically internship, student teaching type stuff, before they're allowed to actually be a licensed therapist. And a lot of times that 2 to 4,000 hours, they either don't get paid or they get paid very, very little for it, because they are not a licensed therapist, and they have to, they have to have an actual licensed therapist, go over all their case files with them and everything. Like, it is an incredibly rough, difficult job to get into, because you are literally helping someone to rewire their brain. And when someone's dissociating, dissociate comes from the idea of a break from reality, being cut off from reality. That's where the word comes from. And so when you're dissociating, like I am a lot of the time with this withdrawal and all the other things going on, you can't rewire your brain because you're not really connected to it the right way. So all the therapy in the world can't actually fix me until I get through this withdrawal and I stop dissociating. Because while I'm in a dissociative state, none of it will do anything to me. It literally, it's kind of like trying to code a computer when it's off. You can sit there and tap on the keyboard all you want. You can write amazing code and just keep going and going and going. If the computer's off or the keyboard's unplugged, nothing's happening. You're just wasting your time. So, yeah. Doesn't mean that the therapy is completely useless. Like, again, I see my therapist once a week. Sometimes twice a week, depending on how bad it is. And she helps me deal. She basically helps me get through the week and helps minimize the additional damage that could be happening because of everything else in my life right now. So, yeah. That's what I got from The Last Jedi. No plot, no spoilers, no anything like that. No, my experience with The Last Jedi was planning for days, going, barely surviving it, and then locking myself in my room for a couple of days afterwards to deal with the overload of emotional information I got just from being in public for a couple of hours to watch a movie. And that's my life right now, and it really sucks, and I don't like it. So, but it's not always going to be my life. I am hitting a low point. Like I've said before, this has been one of the worst years in the 29 years I've been alive. This is hands down been the worst year of my life. This has been my year of hell, and because the withdrawal is going to continue to get worse as I continue to wean myself off the drugs. I haven't even hit rock bottom yet. It's going to happen, and again, I have a support system, and I'm prepared for that to happen. So it's not like, I'm in any danger or anything like that. or at least not in any more danger than is necessary for me to get off the drug. Because again, withdrawal from benzos can actually be deadly. But I'm as safe as I possibly can be. I have a great support group around me that are helping me to get through this. It just sucks. And I think a lot of people need to understand that there are going to be times in your life where your life just sucks. It's not your fault. Sometimes it is your fault. But there is going to be a point in your life where it just sucks and there's nothing you can do about it. And you didn't do anything wrong. It's just your life sucks. And you have to kind of accept that, you know what, my life sucks. And I'm allowed to feel bad about that. I'm allowed to be upset about it. I'm allowed to be depressed about it. I'm allowed to be angry about it. All of these are completely valid, rational reactions to the fact that due to things completely outside of my control, I am in one of the lowest points in my entire life. And accepting that I'm allowed to feel that way is healthy. Accepting that these feelings are real, that I'm allowed to get angry that I can't go out and see movies, that I'm allowed to get angry that I can't leave my room when I want to, that I wake up in the morning and have to wait hours until I convince myself to get out of bed, holding in the need to pee sometimes for hours upon hours. All that stuff sucks. And it's how my life is right now. And it's not always how my life is going to be. But while it is, it sucks. I'm allowed to say it sucks. I'm allowed to be mad and angry and sad and anything else I want to feel about this, because it isn't fair. It isn't right. I shouldn't have to go through this. But I am. And that's the reality of it. And accepting that this is really happening, that it's not my fault, and that I am going to get through it, then yeah, that's really the healthiest way I can deal with this. So that's all for this one. Again, because my life is so horrible right now, and I am in an absolutely immense amount of pain, especially since I just dropped another milligram on my weaning off of my meds, so withdrawal is going to get worse again. I'm going to try and catch up on Daily December. Most of my catch-up videos are going to be as lighthearted as physically possible. I need something fun in my life. I'm going to try and do a little bit of singing, especially since we're getting so close to Christmas. I haven't sang any Christmas songs. I will probably have a little rant that I like to do around this time of year about Christmas music, because I spent, I think, 6 or 7 years in retail, and anyone that worked in retail for more than a year. And sometimes it actually only takes 1 year or one holiday season to get to the point where you vehemently despise Christmas music. So probably have a little humorous rant on that. But yeah, I'm going to try and catch up as much as I can, because I want to be caught up before Christmas. Anyway, if you're still watching this, it's super long. I'm sorry, but it think about how it is for me. I can't tell the passage of time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting me. You guys are probably going to see me get a lot worse. And I'm sorry that you guys have to see that, but being able to talk about it, even to just a red light on a camera, really makes a big difference. It does. So, that's all for me right now. I will see you guys next time. All right.